everybody. I am Andra Annette, and welcome to this week's session of Healing from the Inside Out. And today I have a very special guest with me, Dr. David Paton. He's an acupuncturist, and he has over 30 years in health and wellness. And I love what he does. He's out there teaching people nature's balance. He's teaching habits of wellness, and he's using the circadian rhythm of the natural seasons to really bring you to a better place in your health. So this started with some issues in his own health, and he just found that he really loved it, and he wanted to bring more value to the people that he served, which is always wonderful from any health perspective. So help me have a warm welcome for David Paton. So hi, Dr. David, how are you?
How are you doing, Andra?
I'm doing very well.
Good, good.
So tell me a little bit more about what got you started on this path.
Well, originally I was a respiratory therapist, and I got sick, quite sick, working with children in a pediatrics facility. And nothing was making me better. And ironically, someone said to me, well, go to my acupuncturist. And I did. And I walked away being a Midwestern boy with a healthy dose of skepticism, going, this is quackery, it doesn't work. And 3 months later, I was really sick. And I finally said, well, what else can go wrong? 3 months later, after I went to the acupuncturist, I was better and off all my breathing meds. So that started me on the conversation of like, well, what was going on with acupuncture? And then about a year later, I was in school. And that was in 1990, I started school. So it was 88, 89, I was sick. And I haven't been respiratory sick since. And more importantly, I found that more than just helping me with my breathing, I as a person felt different and felt better. So the body, mind, spirit connection really resonated with me. And so I've spent 30 years basically practicing and studying. And that's the short story.
So the whole start of this show was about bringing mind, body, and spirit back together, because a lot of people are out there separating the body, and you can't. It functions as a unit. So I wanted people to understand the concept that you can't niche down. And if you're mentally not well or spiritually broken, then you're not fit, because it all goes together. Those are all three pieces of the same person, the same human.
Yes.
So I love what you're doing, and you're following the seasons, which the body follows the circadian rhythms. Your circadian rhythm follows the seasons naturally, and that's why we have certain fruits at certain seasons. And
right.
It's definitely a better process. So I am a holistic practitioner and a nurse.
Yeah.
So I am very all about following those natural everything that we have here that was already here before humans got their hands on it.
Right. Well, before technology got their hands on it.
Yes. So I like the whole combination of Western and Eastern medicine, because you're really combining the best of both worlds, I feel.
Yeah, I've watched for 30 years medicine evolve. And, initially it was pretty much just what doctors said. Then we went from that to kind of like, well, everything should be evidence-based. Sorry.
Okay.
And then we went to evidence-informed, which is what I prefer to say, because evidence changes every year or two. So if we do evidence-informed, it's what's currently, this is what we believe. But the truth is medicine has changed constantly over time. And what triggered my conversation about writing about nature-informed is for the very first time I saw a CEU in the facility that I work at. And the CEU was trauma-informed care. And finally, behavioral scientists are getting into medicine. The idea that past traumas could be leading to current illnesses. And that came from an 18-year study of what they started with, which was adverse childhood experiences with children. Then they followed those people and realized that those traumas continue on. So I started to think about it in terms of what I do and what I see. And what I see is that there's a lot of conditions early on that are really reflections of a natural process that we treat as a disease. And the most obvious one of those for me was, when I looked at it, was seasonal affective disorder. Because when I look at seasonal affective disorder, and disorder is just things aren't ordered, which means they're not in their proper place. When I looked at it and realized they had two definitions, fall and winter, spring and summer. So I looked at it and looked at fall and winter. And fall and winter is oversleeping, appetite changes, craving food, weight gain, tiredness, and low energy. And it kind of dawned on me at that moment, this was back in January of this year, that isn't that pretty much what a mammal does in preparation for hibernation in the wintertime? They pack on pounds, they sleep more, nights are longer, we shouldn't be up as late, and we want to sleep, and we're tired. And our culture is so mechanistic that we think this 8, 8, and 8 is normal and should be the same pace all year long, that we don't ever give more grace to the wintertime and rest, and more grace to the summertime and activity. And when we do that, we'll be healthy. When we violate it and then treat it like a disorder, we start to have problems because we start to medicate things or push our body in a way it shouldn't necessarily go, because we're basically animals and mammals. And animals and mammals in the wintertime should hibernate. So the Industrial Revolution changed all this. So my goal is to educate patients to say, hey, maybe the symptoms you're experiencing are just telling you that sleep is okay, that you don't have to operate at 8 o'clock at night in the middle of winter as if it was 8 o'clock in the middle of summer. And if you listen to those things, then you will have fewer. Now, there's a couple of examples. There's that one, and there's many others which are illnesses before they become diseases.
Illnesses is anything that you're holding on into your body. So stress, trauma. Right. So, I mean, trauma, they're very late to the game. It's that it causes illness and sickness, and that these things they later potentiate into much greater illnesses, because Erickson, Freud, all the great philosophers spoke of these things, you know, and not meeting the stages of development would cause this, right? So,
right.
So that was well understood. Then we were forced to study them in medical.
Right.
It was really heeding those warnings. There's a reason you asked us to study this, because this does play a role in the human cycle, life, past traumas,
right.
You know, right. And especially even those childhood traumas. So, but I think they're very quick to slap a label on something or give a medication when it's just a natural process. So, of course, if it's dark out, you're going to want to sleep because your body is reacting to that. So then you should allow your body that time to rest. This doesn't take being a rocket scientist.
No, yes.
Everybody's just looking for solutions to a problem that don't really exist. When you need to hone into your body. So you spoke of habits, and my biggest thing with habits is, you know, I've been saying this for years, if you change your habits, you'll change your life. But the biggest habit you need to change is to hone into your body and listen to that body, because your body is the greatest machine that ever lived. And it will tell you everything you want to know if you're really listening. So, and it does follow the seasons. It does tell you when to sleep. It tells you when you're hungry, and it tells you when you're full. But if you are not practicing mindful behavior, not just at your eating, but in your life, about being present and doing what you need to do, then you're less sensitive to these cues. And because we live in such a fast-paced world where everybody wants immediate gratification, gimme, and everybody's on the go, we've got very desensitized to not just the world around us, but who we are as people.
Yeah.
And that's why this sickness has gotten so out of hand. And, you know, look at COVID, when people were forced to really they weren't allowed to socialize because socialization is very healthy. It does help your mood. It does
Well,
help, your body, everything. And when they were forced to stay home, it had an impact on their emotions. A lot of people still are having trouble re-entering society, especially adolescents.
yeah,
They're more.
I think COVID, the best thing that came out of COVID, as far as I'm concerned, is that suddenly on national TV, people were talking about the effects of stress on the human being. Just stress, just saying, they were saying it out loud. Good Morning America, Today Show, all of them had experts on talking about, oh, stress does this and stress does that. But what amazes me is when I apply this, I work in a long-term care facility. So when I apply this, what's that?
I did years ago too.
Yeah, and so I do acupuncture in a long-term care facility. And one gift that I have is that I'm not on the same timetable as a PT in terms of minutes counting or a doctor in terms of patients they need to see. So I'll see a patient and they'll label them as a difficult patient or a person that's got all these problems. And I just recently had one, and nobody stopped to ask her how her life had been. And so we're making all these decisions. She had a condition where she couldn't keep food down, and she was throwing up for months. She eventually passed, but they're all trying to treat it, and all trying to treat it psychologically. And I just sat and I listened to her for a little bit and said, well, what happened in your life? And she started talking about it, and then she started crying, and then she said, thank you, no one's ever asked me about that, I've never told anybody. But it was too late by that time. So the reason why I want to have my conversation is this can still help people in the end of a disease state where there's something identifiable. But if we can start to learn to pay attention to the seasons when we just feel ill, we can avoid the development of illness to disorder to disease. And that's the key for me. It's like, yes, an illness is one thing, but it doesn't have to turn into a disorder like sleep disorder. Why are you oversleeping? Besides the fact you're trying to run around and your job's got you up 12 hours a night, and your eyes are being stimulated by light, and your melatonin is not being produced. And then if we realize that these cycles of nature create a situation for our body to do what it needs to do, like go to sleep, the longer we keep the lights on, the less likely we're going to fall asleep in an hour. So it's teaching people simple things like that, like just start to dim the lights in the wintertime at 4 or 5 o'clock. Don't run full bore. Try to hit bed by 9 in the wintertime. It's 10 or 11 in the summertime. So each season has a gift.
Not for this girl, not at my age.
Not yet. Well, yeah,
I'm in bed before 11, trust me.
Yeah, I just hit Medicare myself. So it's like, yeah, things are taking their own way with me, if you will. But yeah, I mean, I found it like I'm looking right now online at the oversleep. That's this fall winter one of sleep disorders: oversleep, appetite changes, more food, waking. The spring summer, and this I find hysterical in a way. Trouble sleeping. Well, of course you're going to want to stay up later. Poor appetite. You don't need to eat. You had food all winter long. Weight loss, yes, because you gained weight in the wintertime. Agitation or anxiety, yes, because you're just excited with energy, and increased irritability, partly because you can't move the way you want to move now. You're still stuck in your chair. You're still stuck in your cubicle. You're still stuck wherever you are. You're not able to run around like you should in the springtime. And we think about kids. It's like, yeah, this is what happens with kids. This ends up being attention deficit disorder, or hyperactivity.
I think you over-label them. I think that, for lack of a better word, like post-COVID, there are a lot of children that maybe always had issues, and all of a sudden they became attention deficit, and the children were just struggling with other issues that
Yes.
weren't being treated, and now it moved into something else. I like what you said about that they're talking more about stress and real issues on the news post-COVID. I think it's a little too late. From my perspective,
Yeah.
the things they're talking about now,
Yes,
they've always known, but it didn't pay them well to help us get healthy. If, because medicine is a business. So
Right.
until America started moving towards health, until COVID scared the bejesus out of them, those people never came forward and started talking about stress or healthy eating or exercise, because now they're all in the news, because now the money's going that way. So
Right.
although I applaud their efforts now, I feel like it's a little too late. So
yeah, well, you know, it's like it's I've been trying for 30 years to get that message through. So since I got out of school in 92. And yes, I'm ashamed that things didn't move faster than they could. I do agree that, you know, finances are a part of it, but I also think it's that, you know, in the end, when you look at all of these things, disorder, illness, disease, these definitions, they all end up with as defined by a healthcare professional, as if we can't define them ourselves. And the part that bothers me is if we don't teach, like when I teach my patients this stuff, they go, "Oh, of course, I see that now. Why didn't anybody talk to me about that?" Well, they don't give them time to talk about it. It took me 20 minutes to explain this to you, and they don't get paid for that. I don't get paid for it. So part of it is that we've got a society that since the 50s has it drilled in them that doctors are the all knowledgeable beings and holder of the knowledge that we don't have. You know, when I use the example of a client explaining what they meant when they said burn the candle at both ends, and go like, we knew this back in Ben Franklin's day. Candles were expensive. They were hard to make. They were hard to find. They didn't have electricity. If you stayed up late in the wintertime and got up early, your candle supply dwindled quickly. And it's like, look, just look at that analogy. You know, with you, if you stay up too late and get up too early, what's going to happen to your energy? And where is it going to come from? And how are you going to make it? And when you put it in a simple phrase of nature like that, or in a common sense phrase, people can begin to understand their habits are creating their illness. Unfortunately, by the time they come to me, they've run through the whole medical system. So they often have something that is physically real and is difficult to alter. If you follow my
I gotta
statement.
be honest with you. A lot of people are struggling to lose weight because they have been eating the American diet, which is the sick diets. Okay. If we were in a country that paid for our healthcare, it'd be a lot easier and more accessible. So they've been eating that diet for a really long time. Nobody's pushing them to exercise, and now we're going to give them a pill so they don't have to work as hard.
Yeah.
So, and we're sending a very negative message because we're telling them they don't have the ability to do this, and everybody has the ability to heal themselves because it's God's will, not ours. He's given us those tools. So, and I'm a strong believer of that. So, everything we needed was already given to us. So we do have the potential to heal ourselves with preventative measures, taking care of the instrument that was given to us, and eating and supporting that instrument. So how we choose to show up for ourselves and what we put in our body will be that output, right? So there are generations of diseases that sometimes run in families. Some people can't avoid getting cancer, and some people can't avoid having certain illnesses, but they can take steps to negate some of those risk factors. And people aren't teaching them that. And that's what they need to understand, you know, and make it as simple as, when I eat this apple, my body feels this. And when I eat these green leafy vegetables, all the inflammation in my body starts to come down. So when people teach them in a way and stop talking to them using medical jargon, and treat them like the human beings sitting across from them, it used to annoy the hell out of me that my mother would go to the doctor and come home more confused than when she left. And then ask me, everything that he just said. And I said, you were just at the doctor. Why did you not ask him these questions? They're just like you're asking me. Oh,
Well, they
well,
don't think they don't think they can challenge them. They think they know it. I just had a patient where I sat down for an extra 45 minutes after our treatment with her and explained everything that was going on. And it actually isn't my place to do that. I was a bit out of my lane, but nobody that had the information sat down and explained it to her. And I said, look, this is not official. I'm not putting this on paper. I'm a doctor of acupuncture and oriental medicine. I'm supposed to stay in my Asian medicine lane. But here's what my experience tells you these things mean, and go get a second opinion, because whatever you were told, which was they didn't address what, and I showed them pictures of things, or I would show them the results compared to normal. No one does that anymore. And more importantly, everything, comes back as if there's nothing that the person can do. And even with genetics, I'm a big fan of epigenetics and the idea that something triggers the gene to react. So you may have a genetic tendency towards obesity, but you also might have a family that teaches you to eat poorly. So you put the teaching to eat poorly together with the genetic tendency, and that's the gun and the trigger, and boom, it goes off. But if you teach them to eat well, doesn't mean they're going to be obese. And this is something that I find very frustrating.
Society as a culture is not being society. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, that's okay.
Society as a culture is not being educated properly, because we have more students, more teenagers than ever with diabetes, obesity, and it's very damaging to someone's self-confidence to use such words as obese to a child, to tell them that, because you're telling them something's wrong with them, right? So there has to be a better approach of how we handle things when we're talking to people. And it's not, you can't blame doctors either, because you can't, because
they're doing what they're taught.
They're taught to give instruction and send them home, but they don't have the time they used to. My husband's cardiologist was an elder man, and he would spend 2 hours there with you.
Right.
He still cleans his own exam room. So it depends on what type of doctor. It does come down to your moral ethics and your work ethics and what you put out there, because I can't tell you how many times I've seen nurses or doctors sit and really have those lengthy conversations. It's few and far between, and it's not all of them, but we've put so much on them that they don't have that time. So of course things are being missed, but we do need to put the patient's health back in their hands. Instead of sending them home and telling them they need to eat healthy, we do need to find out if they live in a place where they have access to healthy food.
There are many issues that are wrapped around this, and I would agree with everything you said. For me, the first place is to take my knowledge of the seasons and go like, well, what should you eat in the fall? Well, fall is root season. Spring is leaf and flower season, because that's where the energy's going. The chi in the wintertime drives into the ground to the roots, so that when spring comes, the plant can grow. So sweet potatoes are better in the fall and the winter. They're not as good in the summer and in the spring. That's why we eat more greens are better during the spring and summer, because all the neutrophil and all of the sunshine and all of everything's going to this thing growing. The Chinese medicine model very much looks at seasons and time of day, and when herbs are harvested and when plants are harvested, and looks at them and goes, when is the most energy in that part of the plant? And the most energy in greens is when it's out in the sunshine. That's not in the middle of winter. So you can eat some of them then, but you really need to go to potatoes, carrots. I like sweet potatoes more than potatoes, but sweet potatoes, carrots, roots, beets, all these kind of things.
I eat beets all year round.
We'll have more, well, but they'll be better. They'll be better and richer between fall and spring than they will be between spring and fall.
But they do make compressed powders to supplement at those times.
Right.
they don't
There's other
taste
ways
so
to
good.
get it. But you want to get those compressed powders. If you're talking Chinese medicine, they would harvest it in the fall and then compress it. They would not harvest it in the spring and summer and compress it because it wouldn't have the same energetic nature. Right. So it's like what I love about Chinese medicine, which is where this is coming from, is that it definitely looks at the seasonal effect, not only on you and society, but also on the food we eat and the way it's grown and where the nutrients are. Winter for a person needs to be somewhere where they go deep and dive inside themselves, think about where they want to go and what they want to be. And then in the springtime, advance their plans like a tree would grow. And that's something trying to teach people these cycles so they don't try to start projects in the middle of November. It's like not the best time to start a project. Best time is spring, because that's when the energy is rising. That's when things are taking off. And you can have the most amount of success and growth spring and summer. And it just little things like that can change how a person ends up living their life and what diseases they get or don't get.
I agree. And I really think that people are not really looking into these, and it is basic to follow the seasons. I mean, it's something that we should be taught as a community. So I agree that, I mean, there's reasons why certain things are in season at certain
Yeah.
times, right?
Well,
It's very
well,
basic.
Yeah, and the thing is, we used to know this until the late 40s because we were mostly agrarian. So
Mm.
everybody that was a farmer of some sort, they knew these things.
Mm.
But as we became industrialized and everybody got into these mechanistic hours, we lost touch with the knowledge of our forefathers. You know, we call them old wives' tales when in fact there's truth in them.
Of
And
course.
and we don't, I mean, I can't remember my son learning anything of what I learned from my grandparents and my mother. I mean, I tried, but it goes over his head because it's not in any of his friends' cultures. So, you know, it really is a problem of education that we're losing a generation so far attached to technology that they don't know what nature's like.
They don't need to have to tell time anymore. They don't need to have to learn to sign their name anymore. So don't get me started on education because this educational system is sadly broken.
Yeah.
So how can people reach you? I love what you do. I think that this will really help a lot of people. I love acupuncture. I've gone for acupuncture several times during my life. Found that it did help me, not for respiratory, for other issues.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah, well,
the chronic sinusitis is still there.
Well, the thing is that's a tough one to treat with any medicine.
I've had it my whole life, my entire life since I was a baby.
Yeah.
My lungs, everything was underdeveloped when I was born. I was a preemie, so it's a very small price to pay. You know that I
be alive. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm totally okay with it and grateful for it every day.
Yeah.
So how can people reach you if they wanted to work with you? How would they find you? Because I know you're based in Maryland, but you are virtual. You do treat people globally. So how would they
Well, I have to be careful because since COVID, they lifted the licensure laws, meaning that you could treat wherever you wanted virtually. When COVID ended and they officially ended it, it was all done. They lifted that. So, you know, people can talk to me. I can't treat them from another state because if I'm not licensed in that state, I can't offer. But they can talk.
I'm sorry, if you're treating them as a consultant, is that the same? If you're a private consultant?
No.
So then they could work with you as a consultant.
Definitely.
So when they would apply, they wouldn't apply to the acupuncture. So don't sell yourself short. You can still teach people. People globally. They're just.
Well, that's one of the reasons I've started doing kind of podcasts and wanting to get the word out and finish this book and be able to talk, because I'm not actually technically treating somebody. I'm actually educating somebody. And then after 30 years of treating one-on-one, I'm kind of ready to go to a broader base. My access email is info@startingpointacupuncture.net. So info@startingpointacupuncture.net.
And your book, when is that going to be released, or has it been released?
Well, I'm still actually, this whole podcast has been part of how, helping me write it, because I'm trying to organize. My thoughts are so fast on this that I have to really get down how I'm going to present this logically, because it can seem very scattered if this isn't presented orderly. And every time I talk about it or speak about it, I prepare more. So I've got, I think, the introduction out of today, and I hope to get the materials all assembled hopefully by the end of the year, but maybe even sooner, a smaller version of it even sooner, and put that out online.
I know a wonderful book editor that's very good at helping you articulate and rearrange.
Okay.
She's very good. She's on Facebook, Erin Lund. So
how do you spell?
Lund, Erin Lund. She's very, very good at what she does. And she also does book writing, coaching to help people and stuff like that, to help you through the process. Her and I, we've been down that road. We've written books. We're international bestsellers. So, but that's what she's always done, and she might help you. And get it out there sooner, actually.
Yeah, I have 3 or 4 that I want to write, and the trouble is they kind of end up overlapping, and so I've got to sort them out. And this is the one I want to write, though, because I think what we need to do is develop a new category of medicine, not to get rid of the other names. So evidence informed is important, trauma informed is important, nature informed is important. Not one of them is more important than the other, or better, or more right. They just highlight aspects of different
principles.
Different principles. And I think the trauma informed one. But when I read that and I looked at my facility I worked in, I said, you got to start teaching the GNAs that, you got to start teaching the RNAs that, you got to start teaching the doctors that, you got to go ground up, so that the people that are actually applying trauma-based care, trauma-informed care, are actually doing it and can do it and want to do it. Yes. It's not going to be an easy transition, because it means people being more than just robots going through their job.
But I think that as more modalities, I mean, doctors today will recommend taking a yoga class for anxiety. And they know that more modalities are out there. So there is that openness. There years ago, you went to a doctor and they were like, you need to do A, B, C, and D to get F. And now they understand that they're not the only wheel in the well, and that it's because in healthcare, we work as a multidisciplinary team. So doctors work with several parts of teams. A doctor is not necessarily like you wouldn't go to a podiatrist if you had skin issues, right?
Right.
So we use each other in the facilities that we work in to really get their specialty and their expertise of practice. So they need to broaden that to that world view, and to really treat the patients.
To give a positive analogy of the changes that have occurred, when I first decided I wanted to go to acupuncture school, it was 1988. And I was working as a respiratory therapist, and the epidemiologist at the hospital I worked at told me it was quackery, it was nuts, and nurses, nobody had heard about it, nobody was doing it. It was all people who were second, career people, occasionally nurses, but a whole lot of people who've been treated. And by the time I got out of school, nurses were already enrolling in programs. It was like 2 years later, the nurses were taking programs and asking more questions about it. So since 1988, the interest in it, the interest in Chinese medicine, the interest in alternative health has grown tremendously. It's the model that hasn't shifted.
Correct. I agree with you.
Yeah.
To tell people where they can reach you one more time, and I'm gonna tell Erin about you, because she will organize your thoughts in such a way you won't even believe they're yours.
Well,
wow,
I hope they are mine.
Yeah, that's great.
So I'm David Paton, Paton, Dr. David Paton. I don't really care about that, but yes, Dr. David Paton, Paton, info@startingpointacupuncture.net.
That's wonderful. All right, so I want to thank you for coming in and spending time today. Unfortunately, I do have to end the show because they have to go too.
Yes, no, I appreciate it. But thank you so much for the time.
Oh, anytime. And we're gonna do a follow-up after your book. I want to help you
Okay.
bring that
I'm
out.
gonna call this person. Thank you.
So when that book is ready, you let me know. We'll do a show about that and what that was like, that experience. Okay.
Yep, and get some
Yeah.
vacation.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you guys for joining us on this week's session and have a great day.